And we're off, says Kieran. Anticipating me saying hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game, with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. The reason that's tickled me so much, Kieran, is because you and I did a lovely show last night for some of your students and colleagues at Liverpool University, and we'd worked out what we were going to do. I was going to introduce you, and as I walked on stage, you were right behind me.
Yes.
So, well, I'm not sure we're cut out to be a double act, Kieran, but it's lovely to see your photograph, your moving photograph. It was very lovely to see you last night, Kieran. I should say, if full disclosure, we normally record this as close as we can to Thursday, but somebody is working till late tonight and has to be up at 5 o'clock on Wednesday morning to go to Rome, I believe, on a pilgrimage, I imagine. So we're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. I've only just got back from Liverpool. It was so nice to meet your students, Kieran, and I actually got quite torn, I have to say, mostly, because we met 5 students who are at Liverpool University because they were inspired by the pod.
Yes.
Which part of me thought that was wonderful, and part of me thought, we're just putting little mini Maguires out into the world. It's like some kind of Austin Powers plot that was just sending more and more infected young people around the world to amortise their nation on behalf of the price of football.
Yes, we did have people from all over the world.
Did.
I'm very lucky to teach such an international audience. I think we're missing a trick that we should be on some form of commission. But my colleagues who have been in contact with me today have absolutely delighted that you chose to use the Pro Vice Chancellor as your victim of the evening and take the mickey out of him incessantly. And we were very professionally not laughing at the time, but in the WhatsApp group afterwards, Kevin got stuck in, didn't he?
It's a golden rule of comedy, Kieran. When you're doing an audience that you're not sure of, when it's a mixed audience of young and old people, and you're not entirely sure how to deal with that, and find the most senior person in the room and take the piss out of him. And they seem to thoroughly enjoy it. It's Newsday, Kieran. We had some cracking discussions last night, Kieran, and some cracking questions and suggestions from your students, I have to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, your students seem a brighter lot than your colleagues, Kieran, I'm going to say here. Students are really on the ball. I mean, students from all over the world with a really insightful knowledge of English football and its finances. One of the suggestions I did particularly like was when one of your students said we should do contact the BBC with a Homes Under the Hammer type scenario, where you are Dion Dublin and you and I go to various football clubs and you suggest how they can improve their finances. But one of the big areas of discussion last night was the Premier League and their reluctance to distribute money to the EFL. It came up on several occasions. But news just this morning that the EFL might have money coming in from another source.
Yes. I think this is Mike Keegan in the Mail. And he is saying that there is an offer on the table on which the EFL clubs will be voting on Tuesday the 5th. And that's when we are recording, due to I'm teaching today until 5 o'clock, and then I've got to get from Liverpool to Brighton tonight, so we won't be able to do much.
Yes, recording. So you have to go to Rome. Yes, we know, to watch Brighton.
I've not mentioned that.
Your eyes have mentioned it, Kieran.
That's true. So the indication is that the EFL could have a 40% increase in respect of the international rights. Now, we have to caveat this slightly and say, it's 40% of what is not a particularly big figure to begin with, but 40% is 40%. So that's the what. And as I always say to my students, it's not the whats that are interesting, it's the whys. What's the because factor behind all of this? And a big driver of this is the interest in Wrexham and McElhenney and Reynolds, and the romantic story of taking the club from the National League into the EFL. So there's a genuine following for Wrexham. We saw that. Wrexham played Manchester United in a pre-season friendly in the States last year, purely on the back of the strength of the programme. And that has increased overall interest in the United States, and we're seeing an increasing number of American owners coming into the English game, even at the lower tiers. I think Carlisle have got a potential US owner. We've got new owners at Crawley who have come in from the States, and so on. So there is a much broader increase in interest, and on the back of that, the TV companies are having, who were a bit sniffy, if I'm honest, in relation to the EFL product, are saying we noticed that the meter is now ticking in terms of people who are switching on for this, and therefore willing to pay a bit more money. So that is good news. That should not, however, be used by the Premier League as a vehicle, as a stick to which they will attempt to, or they should attempt to, reduce the amount distributed to the EFL clubs. And again, my understanding broadly is that the amount of money is not the problem. And I think we're talking around about 190 million. It's how the Premier League clubs are going to split that 190 million between all 20 members. And as we've said on a few occasions recently, the Premier League has become increasingly factionalized, increasingly difficult to predict in terms of the way that votes would go. For quite a few years, it was the big six versus the other 14, and Palace's Steve Parish, as we know, was sort of the shop steward of the other 14 who would go into battle against the Super League six. But those lines of demarcation no longer exist, and you're getting a very, very unpredictable responses, even from some clubs from whom you think it might be in their interests to vote for a more generous distribution deal to EFL clubs, because they might not be in the Premier League next season, and yet those clubs, perhaps they've got somebody tapping their shoulder saying, I don't think you should do this, and they say, okay, I'll quite happily go along with what you want me to do.
Well, see, you sound secretive there, Kieran, but I know for a fact I've got an opportunity coming up in which I can reveal which club you're talking about. And I'm going to do that in context. But interesting, we had Matt Slater, a wonderful journalist from The Athletic last night, with us as a guest, who used the word fractured when it came to the Premier League and their response to distributing money to the EFL. Those clubs in the Premier League who clearly don't want this to happen, or don't want it to happen so extensively, could they not use as an excuse? Could they not say, well, look, the EFL have just had a massive increase in their broadcasting rights, so why are they still wanting money from us?
Well, a 40% increase on a small sum is still 40% of a small amount is a small amount. If we take a look at the new broadcast deal signed between the Premier League and the US markets and some of the other international markets, the increase in sterling terms, in actual value terms, is far, far greater. So therefore, despite this good news, and it is good news, there's no doubt about that, in terms of the EFL broadcasting rights, the gap between the Premier League and the EFL is growing, and it's growing at a faster and faster rate all the time.
Newcastle United's owners, Kieran, considering a seismic move.
Yes. St James's Park's not big enough. There is a huge waiting list for fans who want to see Newcastle United. Clearly, the fan base has embraced the ethos of the new owners and the willingness of the new owners to put in substantial sums. So that leaves a big and difficult decision in terms of where do Newcastle United go. You could take the Lego approach to St James's Park, and you could. There is the potential to extend an individual stand or two, but even so, I think if that route is followed, it's going to be quite a challenge in terms of an architectural element, and B, it's not going to necessarily allow the club to substantially increase the prawn sandwich brigade as far as their contribution to Newcastle United. And people were saying, well, hold on, Newcastle United are owned by PIF, so therefore that's a non-issue. But moving forwards, we know that the ability of a club to pay wages is linked to its ability to generate revenue. And whether you like it or not, the hospitality sector, the commercial sector, the sponsorship sector, in terms of the seats and the boxes, has a huge impact upon a club's overall match day revenue. So there is a case for saying, let's go down the route that was undertaken by Spurs. Let's go down the route that's been undertaken in Spain by the big clubs there, and if you look at the new camp, knock it down, rebuild it from scratch, and Newcastle could easily sell 75,000, perhaps even 80,000 tickets on a regular basis, especially for big matches. And then the club would have the additional the regular Geordie fans who will be attending matches, but B, that there will be a much more comprehensive offer that they would be able to give to the corporate sector. And to a certain extent, as far as the Premier League is concerned, you've got to run to stand still. We've seen the expansion of Anfield. We know that Manchester City are planning to do something similar. Spurs have got this amazing new stadium, and there are clubs now who are making £100 million plus from ticket sales. If Newcastle add on 5,000 seats to St James's Park, they are going to be a huge way behind that, and that's going to give them a competitive disadvantage when it comes to their cost control and their compliance with the PSR rules.
Yeah, having said all that, Kieran, it strikes me, knowing Newcastle fans as I do, that they will take a lot of persuading that it's a good idea to move out of St James's Park to provide 5,000 extra seats for corporate entertainment. And back to your mystic mutterings of a few minutes ago about clubs in the Premier League perhaps voting in a way that you would think was contrary to their interests in the next season or two. As the Sheffield United Arsenal score was filtering through last night, there's several people in the room pointing out that Sheffield United's relegation would be bad news for Newcastle because Sheffield United are voting the way they're being told to. Is that true?
Well, we don't know whether it's true. I think we don't actually get to see the votes. But another thing that we are seeing as far as the Premier League is concerned is that it's become very leaky. The monthly meetings which take place between executives are then being communicated to journalists for both positive and negative reasons. And one of the accusations, and we don't know whether this is true or not, is that Sheffield United appear to be aligning themselves with the same voting direction as Newcastle. And then you say, well, who is the Sheffield United owner? It's a Saudi prince, and of course Newcastle are well known that are controlled by PIF. So on that basis, and this has always been a concern, I think, in recent years, that American owners might always vote together. We've now got two clubs who have Saudi owners, and you can see why they might choose to vote in agreement with one another.
Although I think it's only fair to point out, Kieran, with the amount of speculation around the Premier League at the moment, that could be a lot of journalists putting two and two together and coming up with completely the wrong solution. But we'll keep an eye on that one. Another Premier League club, Kieran, saying out loud this week that they may have to leave their ground if they can't sort out some local issues.
Yes, this is Nottingham Forest, and Nottingham Forest own the stadium, but they lease the land upon which the City Ground stands. And for anybody that is in possession of a leasehold property, there'll be some people nodding along with this, say, yeah, leasehold's an absolute nightmare. And far be it for me to say nice things about some people, but even Michael Gove, who's sort of banging the drum on this, leasehold is a problem in this country. And as far as Forest are concerned, the leasehold on the county ground only has 33 years remaining. You might say, well, 33 years is a long period of time, but Mr. Marikanakis, who is the owner of Forest, he wants to invest substantial sums into the redevelopment and the expansion of the city ground. And you're not going to want to do that if you know that potentially you won't have a piece of land upon which you can call your own and which you can rent out. So if we take a look at the current position, based on the most recent Forest accounts, which are the 2022 accounts, they had what we refer to as an operating lease, which is effectively what you pay in rent. That was £185,000. Now, I think it's rumoured to be a wee bit higher than that in most years. The council have apparently said that they want £1 million in ground rent, and Forest are saying, well, what exactly is the local council giving us in respect for quadrupling? So there's a bit of a standoff now between the two parties. But Marikanakis wants to develop the city ground. He's got two main issues that he's looking at. First of all, the Peter Taylor stand is they want to increase the capacity there from 5,000 to 10,000. And I love going to Forest Ground. You know, it's proper old school. You get a fantastic atmosphere there at times. And the other thing that I think he's planning to do is to build a shark pool underneath the referee's changing room, where Mark Clattenburg apparently will be given control of a button and a pair of sliding doors at the bottom on that. So that's where they are. You know, from the club's point of view, they need a degree of certainty. It then starts to get very political. So you've now got 8 local MPs piling in, saying, well, we're on the side of the football club. And the reason why they're saying that is because they're not the people in charge of the local budget. Of course, they're the people many of whom have constrained the local budget through distribution elements. So it's all getting very nasty. I don't expect or anticipate anything to happen in terms of Forest moving away from the city ground, but unless they can secure a long-term lease or even buy out the freehold of the land, you can see that it's potentially an option, because there is clearly a breakdown between them and the local council. There's been negotiations going on, I think, since 2019, and no solution has been found. And where therefore the clock is ticking as far as the lease is concerned.
Presumably buying the freehold would be the expensive option, wouldn't
it? It would be expensive, but it gives you certainty. Yeah, and there's a much broader issue in terms of leasehold properties. You know, leasehold agreements should be for 999 years, and too often they're 99 years. And you might say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, if you bought a property on leasehold, and that property was built in the 60s or the 70s, you will find that it actually starts to get quite difficult to sell that property. But that's a non-football financial issue. But it's certainly something I think many house owners are experiencing at present.
Michael Gove seems to be doing a lot of drum banging lately, doesn't he, in various things? Makes you wonder where he gets the energy, Kieran. This episode of The Price of Football is brought to you by NordVPN. If you use unsecure public Wi-Fi connections with your laptop or mobile device and worry about whether your data is safe, using NordVPN can protect you.
With NordVPN, your internet traffic is routed through a secure encrypted tunnel which protects your data and privacy. You can also have NordVPN on up to 6 devices. So that's your laptop, your phone, smart TV, tablet, and even your router can all get the same level of protection. NordVPN is fast, easy to use, and you can connect with one click or even enable auto connect for 0-click protection. I use it wherever I go.
Price of Football listeners can go to nordvpn.com/priceoffootball now to get an exclusive deal. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/priceoffootball. Be quick, because this offer is available for a limited time only. Independent regulator, Kieran. With hindsight, sitting on the train home this morning, reading a text from Ali, I do concede that it probably was quite childish of me to try and get your students to sing Tracy and Kieran Sitting in the Tree, Kissing. But
it was, yes.
It was, yeah. But it got the required laugh, and that's all. Sadly, that's all. I'm shallow enough for that to be all I care about. It seems, though, Kieran, we know the independent regulator is coming, but it seems that we have some, I'll say, indication or at least speculation on who perhaps it may be, or certainly there seems to be a front-running contender.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody's doing an awful lot of guesswork. And the latest person whose name has been mentioned is the barrister who represented UEFA against Manchester City. And the irony there is that Manchester City are the only member of the Big Six, and in fact, one of the very few members of the Premier League who have consistently said, we're in favour of a regulator. So the person who was prosecuting them for UEFA, I think his name is Mark Phillips. He is a very highly regarded KC. So, somebody with a legal background who will understand the rules. There's a lot of debate going on at clubs. I've been contacted by people at a club or two to say they fear that the regulators' potential powers are being watered down, and therefore it becomes a bit of a paper tiger in terms of its abilities going forward. We'll have to wait to see what is happening there. But a big hitter. My only concern would be is exactly what is the role going to be of the head of the regulator. It's a public service position, so therefore that will be reflected in the amount of money available. KCs are very talented. They are very much in demand, and they are able to earn substantial amounts of money. So would a KC want to take on this role? It could be that you want to do it because you feel that the broader non-financial benefits outweigh the financial ones, or you've made enough money, or from your existing career, and so on. So it's one name. There's other names that are floating around. Some of whom I think we would welcome more than others.
It does say independent regulator on the tin, Kieran, and I can't help thinking that were this chap to be appointed, Man City would point out that there was a degree of not independent here. If he's already acted against Man City in a legal case, surely they'd be entitled to say, well, this guy is surely subconsciously even going to be prejudicial against us. I mean, you could argue that every club will possibly find a reason to prevent every regulator, but I don't think City would be particularly happy about that appointment, would they?
I don't think they'd actually have an issue with it. And the reason for this is that if you talk to some of our friends in sports law, they say, and Tony Soprano always used to say this himself, it's business, it's not personal. We represent the client. And, if we win or lose, we move on. And for somebody as senior as this, they will have represented both for and against the vast majority of football clubs in the football pyramid over a course of years. So it's easy to pick out on a sort of a whataboutery perspective. Oh well, he's acted against them in the past, or he's acted for them in the past. If you were appointed regulator, would you be biased against decisions for Brighton, for example?
Yeah,
I thought you might be.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm hoping I get the job because I've happily put that when it says any other interests. Yeah, fucking over Brighton. That's reading, walking, and screwing Brighton. There you go. I've been up front. I might not get the interview, but at least I've told them what's going to happen if I get the job. I'm just happy with that thought now. I'm talking to happy, Kieran. Yes, I'm really proud of myself for bringing it back there because you threw me. You're one of those annoyingly chirpy people, Kieran. For every day of the year, you can find a reason for you to be the happiest day of the year. You like all the seasons, you like all the months, but this is a time of year, Kieran, when you're particularly happy because it's when the accounts start popping into the inbox. The Premier League accounts are popping into the inbox. So we've seen Wolves and a couple of others, the latest accounts. I've reached a stage, Kieran, when the numbers are so big, I don't know if they're good or bad anymore.
And I think you're absolutely right to say that. The reason why we're getting so much publication of accounts at present is that under UK company law, you are obliged to submit your accounts within 9 months of your year end. Now, quite a few Premier League clubs and clubs from the EFL as well and Scottish clubs have a 31st of May accounting year end, which means that they've got to submit the accounts to the government body by the 9 months would be the 28th, or in fact this year, the 29th of February 2024. So my company's accounts alarm has been going off with an increasing regularity over the course of the last few days, and I've been quite frantic in terms of trying to keep my spreadsheet updated. And you sort of, I could do with hiring an octopus or two for assistance with regards to that. But there's sort of two things I'm sort of picking up from this. First of all, and we're not a cynical show, Kevin.
No,
and we've always said that. It is that some clubs are you might be accusing them of being just a little bit cute, because what they've done is that 24 or 48 hours before they send the accounts in to Companies House, they put out a press release. And in that press release, it's effectively a one-pager. And that allows them to control the narrative. So if we take a look at the Aston Villa website, which first sort of highlighted the accounts, it said, this has been a fantastic year in part of our ability to follow our strategic objectives and completion of our goals. Then it spoke about following a change of direction of management. They're too polite to say we sacked Steven Gerrard. So you go through this on a paragraph by paragraph basis, and I'm going through. Well, this is supposed to be a financial review, and you're talking about being awarded. You're now hosting Euro 2020. There's no numbers, there's no commentary, and then you go right down. And they say, well, we've invested so much money in the players. And fans go, yeah, we want to hear that. And then you go right down to the last couple of paragraphs of the document. And it says, oh, by the way, we lost £120 million in 2023. And exactly, wow. And as you're saying, you become sort of immune to the numbers. 120 million quid in a single season is a huge amount of money. And then again, you don't want to appear to be too cynical. I look at the Aston Villa submissions to Companies House, and 24 hours later, the accounts are sent in to Companies House. But because they take a day or two to go through the fax machine, you don't get to see the numbers. So what we're now going to have is that the media, the media need to want to do things on an immediacy basis, they will simply cut and paste from the press release. And for me, the devil's always in the detail. So, have there been any impairments? Is there any loan interest? Where's the funding for the club coming? All of these issues, which I know are pretty boring, but to anybody who's looking at the clubs from an analytical point of view, they'd like to see those numbers, to be able to be given just a little bit more clarity. You can't have a holistic observation of a club from reading a one-page summary. And they're not the only Premier League club that have done that over the course of the most recent week. And also in respect to Villa, they lost £119 million. What else have Villa done? Villa have pushed back their accounting date from the 31st of May to the 30th of June. Why have they done that? Well, a cynic might say, and we're not a cynical show, is that Villa perhaps feel that they're very much at the edge of the FFP limit, and by pushing back the accounts date for a month, it now gives them the month of June in which to sell a player to make sure that they made the profits from that sale, which will allow them to be within the FFP limits. And you don't want to think that, because I like Villa. The reason why I like Villa, it goes back to 1980 and 81, and Tony Morley and Gary Shaw and Peter With and Dennis Mortimer, and and they were a team that the whole country got behind when they were in the European Cup. So that there's that. So they've lost 119 million.
Sorry, Kieran, just before you move on, because I want to keep the thought in my head. It's perfectly legal, we should point out.
Absolutely.
To change.
Absolutely. Yeah, nothing.
In which case, Villa fans might say it's perfectly sensible then.
It is, and it might also, and I would do the same under those. If I felt that I was at the limit, or perhaps potentially at the wrong side of the FFP, I would do exactly the same. But I think the cynic in me is saying, well, does this mean that the club is not explicitly but implicitly saying we need to make an adjustment? Does this therefore make Villa qualifying for the Champions League more important than it was, perhaps 12 months ago? They've done fantastically well this season. They played brilliant football, and they're fourth on merit. But it does go to show that even a club which is run extremely well on the pitch, and that has been the case under Unai Emery, still faces challenges off the pitch.
I went quiet during your earlier explanation about Villa because it says here Wolves are losing £184,000 a day. And as you know, my mental arithmetic isn't good. So I was trying to work out how that compares to Villa's 119 million a year. But there's no business, Kieran, in which losing £184,000 a day is not a cause for concern, is there? Except football.
Yeah, it's utterly bonkers. So Wolves, I didn't think that they'd done anything spectacular in 2022-23. But when you take a look, they bought players for, I think, over £200 million during that season. And that's why they've sort of reversed that position this season. Again, they're doing pretty well though. But it does show that despite all the additional monies coming into the game, the money going out is going out that much faster. Again, we go back to Villa. The Villa wage bill went up by 41%, and I'm going, well, I do not know a soul that got a 41% pay rise in 2023. But in the world of football, that's the way it goes. So Wolves have lost £1 million a week plus. We've got Villa losing £2 million a week. Southampton have announced their results, huge losses. Even Liverpool, and again, Liverpool have gone down that route of, here's the press release, we're not going to show you the accounts just yet. Even Liverpool lost a few £1 million last season. I'm going, this is Liverpool. They are a global brand. They've got Anfield. Admittedly, there was the development of Anfield, which would have hurt them a little bit, but they were in the Champions League. And if these clubs cannot break even you do wonder about the sanity of the game. But everything is being driven by costs, and normally in any business, I would say my increase in revenue determines my ability to increase my cost base. In the world of football, that simply doesn't apply. If you when I went back to the very start of the Premier League, revenues have increased by 2,600%, which is an amazing achievement. But wages have gone up by 3,600%, which is just bonkers.
I'm going to channel my inner Thurgle Sharky here, Kieran, and say I'm sure there was a CEO of a water company who probably got a 43%
Yes.
pay rise last year. And Kieran, I know this is one of your favourite weeks. I know it's accounts week, but you're going to Rome. Leave the laptop behind, Kieran.
Oh, I am.
You are?
Because I'm travelling with Ryanair, and because the cost of the flights is extortionate, I'm bejazered if I'm going to pay an extra 30 million. Sorry, not 30 million. 30 pounds. 30 pounds each way for putting a small rucksack underneath my seat. So I've bought myself a Ryanair sized bag. Or I should have just bought my wash bag with me, and that would have been more than adequate. And when it arrived via a river-based delivery system, I could not believe just how small it is. So the laptop is being left behind.
You could have just gone down a pair of pants in one pocket, pair of socks in the other, toothbrush, and that's enough. What you need to do, Kieran, is go onto YouTube and look for a song called Cheap Flights by Fascinating Aida, which will sum up everything you need to know about trying to book a flight for 50 pence to go to a wedding in Ireland. Rotherham's figures are out, Kieran, and they seem to be both good and bad at the same time.
Rotherham, in my view, are one of the good guys as clubs. And we were asked when we had this chat with students, could you name any well-run clubs in football? And Rotherham are very much on my good clubs list. We've got the likes of Tranmere and Lincoln, and Plymouth and Andy Holt, Accrington, and many others. But the problem with being well run and saying we're effectively going to try to not break even, but we're going to just have a tiny loss, and that's what they had last year in the Championship. If the average loss in the Championship is £476,000, and you're trying to break even, £476,000 a week, I should say, and you're trying to break even, that means that you're going to be at one end of the one end of the table. The average wage at Rotherham is around about, I think, a third of, again, the average in the Championship. And there will be Rotherham fans saying, we're having a pretty dreadful 23-24. We won 3 matches all season. Well, I'm not down with the dog in a fight, but what else do you expect? And why should clubs have to have sugar daddies in order to compete in the Championship? Let alone the Premier League. But one of the things which really impressed me about Rotherham is, they've got their own stadium, and we'll come up and pay you a visit, Rotherham. We see if we can bring the price of football live, because you're on our people that are on our good step. We always try to make a bit of extra effort. That's why we've done Plymouth and Accrington and so on. But this season, and this is one of these things that makes you feel warm and fuzzy about football. They've, instead of having a sponsor, and they're one of those clubs that say, we don't want a gambling sponsor, we don't want a crypto sponsor, even if it costs us a bit of money. Their front of shirt deal, I believe, is with the local hospice and highlighting the work done there. And they've gone to some local businesses and say, look, this is a sign for you as a local business. We will give you a deal in which you effectively cover the cost of the sponsorship deal, which is advertising the local hospice. And what we'll do as the football club is, we'll give you a box. We'll do do some advertising in the programme and bits and pieces for you. And everybody wins. And by all accounts, that's really made a difference as far as the hospice is concerned. It's raised the profile. It's allowed the hospice to help in its fundraising activities. You've got local businesses who people are holding in higher regard as a result of that. And the club is doing the right thing, I think, from an ethical point of view. When you've got other clubs who are under, and I appreciate commercial divisions are under department. They just go, who's the highest bidder? Oh, it's crypto.com from an offshore island, but they're paying us more money. Let's take it and move on.
You drop hints, Kieran, that we might think about going to Rotherham, but our people are speaking to their people as we speak, because we are putting together the next legs of our nationwide tour. Of course, it's a nationwide tour. Where else would you tour except around the nation, basically? But we are looking to put a run of 6 or 7 gigs in place. And if yes, by all means, if you want to suggest that we come to your club, we'd love to talk to you about doing that. You mentioned Lincoln, Kieran. Our final story is a good news one for once, because you mentioned Lincoln being on your permanent good step. And last week we spoke to Rob Bradley, chair of the Imps Trust, about Lincoln City adopting a golden share for supporters. And now another club have done the same thing. So, this could be the first couple of pebbles, Kieran, in a small avalanche.
Yes, and also credit's got to go to one of our secret lawyers who was involved in sort of the first sort of golden share club, which was Brentford. And it's great that supporters' trusts are in conversation with another, and they've got a knowledge exchange. But this is York City, and people might be saying, well, what is a golden share? A golden share effectively says, look, we as fans, we love the club, but we don't think we should be getting involved with the day-to-day things in terms of recruitment of players and what's happening on the pitch. We will leave this to the professionals, but there are certain issues which are very close to the hearts of the club. The colour of the shirt, the badge, where we play our football, and so on. And the golden share effectively allows the fans to have a veto. And the club effectively has to therefore go to the fans and say, this is what we're proposing to do. Do you think it's a good idea? And fans are not, we're not Luddites. I think most people are receptive to good ideas. We saw that with the Wrexham Fans Trust. They sold out. I know some of the people that saw the pitch by Reynolds and McElhenney, and they bought into it, and clearly they've benefited as a result. When it came to Brentford, they moved from Griffin Park to the G-Tech. That was a pitch by the club. It was very professional. The club still wants to retain its community position in that area of London, and that sailed through. So I think for those clubs who think that football fans are very, very conservative with a small c, that's not the case. What they don't want is for a club to have its stadium moved 50 or 60 miles up the road because there's a bigger population there, and when we move to sort of a US style of shifting sands when it comes to the heartbeat of an individual club, or it's being sold for development of houses, and you're going to be shifted to this amount of town place, which is soulless bowl. We are. I think fans do see themselves as guardians of individual clubs, and the golden share helps assist that.
Sometimes, Kieran, I hate having to do this, but I don't like being told off by producer Guy, because some producer Guy will say there's a little bit of grit you could have thrown there, because we should point out that the fans that have the golden share, normally it's either you've got to be a season ticket holder or a member of the Supporters Trust before you can vote on it. It's not a general, everyone who's ever been to a York City game or a Lincoln City game gets an opinion, is it?
That is correct. So it will be restricted. It's normally people who have both an emotional investment and a financial investment in the club, and we have an emotional investment from the first match to the last in terms of what we attend. As far as the financial investment is concerned, every March or April, you're transferring that money from your account to Palace or me to Brighton, and we're committing ourselves for another 12 months, and we will do that provided we can, in terms of financial circumstances and physical circumstances, for the rest of our lives. That is a greater investment than somebody that might go along once every 5 years. And also, I think it does protect the club, because otherwise you could get rogue actors coming into this. They attend a couple of matches. They could be from rival clubs, up for mischief and so on. Quite often with the Golden Share, it allows the Supporters Trust to appoint a director onto the board. And again, they can be the voice of the fan base. And one would hope that voice would be representative of the fan base as a whole.
I tell you what, Kieran, if I was a York City fan and they had the Golden Share in the late 70s, they would still have that kit. So it's in the top. It's in the top. That maroon kit with the white Y, for me, is in the top 5 kits of all time.
Was it made by Admiral as well, when Admiral were just going through that Imperial phase?
I don't care who makes the kit. I just like the colours, Kieran.
Yeah.
But that was a fantastic football kit. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you. And it'll get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes. And you can do that by going to patreon.com, Price of Football. If you have a question you'd like answered on our Monday questions show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com, and you can go to the same website to buy our book. We should be back on Monday with the Questions Pod. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Oh, well, as always, thanks for all the support you give the show through so many means, and all the ways that you get in contact with it. We genuinely appreciate it, and we do try to reply to as many of those as possible. Although we acknowledge that the length of the in tray in producer Guy's Q&A special email is getting bigger and bigger. There's a variety of ways in which you can support the show, but one of the ways is to give us a review using our app. And you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Brian Blessed and my Uncle Franco, who was from Italy. I'd be more than happy. Nobody made a tomato sauce like Uncle Franco's tomato sauce.
Oh, we haven't got time, Kieran, but remind me next time I shall tell you the story of Brian Blessed absolutely losing his shit on a live radio show that I did. Absolutely losing his shit when I was doing this live radio show with Jeremy Nicholas, and Brian Blessed had got he climbed Mount Everest, except he got about 100 yards from the top and had to come down again because he was having oxygen difficulties. And every time he mentioned climbing Everest, Jeremy Nicholas would go, "Some of Everest." And in the end, he just went, "Oh my Lord!" And I mean, literally, every studio on the floor, people were opening the door saying, "Bye, everybody."
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.